Section 27 of To the Last Man by Zane Grey. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 14, Part 1. Then followed the leathery flop of saddles to the soft turf and the stamp of loosened horses. Jean heard a noise at the cabin door, a rustle, and then a knock of something hard against wood. Silently, he moved his head to look down through a crack between the rafters. He saw the glint of a rifle leaning against the sill. Then the doorstep was darkened. Ellen Jorth sat down with a long, tired sigh. She took off her sombrero, and the light shone on the rippling, dark-brown hair hanging in a tangled braid. The curved nape of her neck showed a warm tint of golden tan. She wore a gray blouse, soiled and torn, that clung to her lissom shoulders. "Colter, what are you going to do?" she asked suddenly. Her voice carried something Jean did not remember. It thrilled into the icy fixity of his senses. "We'll stay here," was the response, and it was followed by a clinking step of spurred boot. "Sure I won't stay here," declared Ellen. "It makes me sick when I think of how Uncle Tad died in there alone, helpless, sufferin'. The place seems haunted." "Well, I'll agree that it's tough on you. But what the hell can we do?" A long silence ensued, which Ellen did not break. "Something has come off round here since early mornin'," declared Colter. "Somers and Springer haven't got back. And Antonio's gone. Now, honest, Ellen, didn't you hear rifle shots off somewhere?" "I reckon I did," she responded gloomily. "And which way?" "Sounded to me up on the bluff, back pretty far." "Well, sure that's my idea, and it makes me think hard. You know Somers came across the last camp of the Isbels, and he dug into a grave to find the bodies of Jim Gordon and another man he didn't know. Queen kept good as brag. He braced that Isbel gang and killed those fellers, but either him or Jean Isbel went off, leaving bloody tracks. If it was Queen's, you can bet Isbel was after him. And if it was Isbel's tracks, why sure Queen would stick to them. Somers and Springer couldn't follow the trail. They're sure not much good at trackin'. But for days they've been ridin' the woods, hopin' to run across Queen. Well, now, maybe they run across Isbel instead. And if they did and got away from him, they'll be here sooner or later. If Isbel was too many for them, he'd hunt for my trail. I'm gamblin' that either Queen or Jean Isbel is dead. I'm hopin' it's Isbel. Because if he ain't dead, he's the last of the Isbels, and maybe I'm the last of the Jorth gang. Sure I'm not hankerin' to meet the half-breed. That's why I say we'll stay here. This is as good a hiding place as there is in the country. We've grub. There's water and grass." "Me stay here with you alone?" The tone seemed a contradiction to the apparently accepted sense of her words. Jean held his breath, but he could not still the slowly mounting and accelerating faculties within that were involuntarily rising to meet some strange, nameless import. He felt it. He imagined it would be the catastrophe of Ellen Jorth's calm acceptance of Colter's proposition. But down in Jean's miserable heart lived something that would not die. No mere words could kill it. How poignant the moment of her silence! How terribly he realized that if his intelligence and his emotion had believed her betraying words, his soul had not. But Ellen Jorth did not speak. Her brown head hung thoughtfully. Her supple shoulders sagged a little. "Ellen, what's happened to you?" went on Colter. "All the misery possible to a woman," she replied, dejectedly. "Shore I don't mean that way," he continued persuasively. "I ain't gainsayin' the hard facts of your life. It's been bad. Your dad was no good. But I mean I can't figure the change in you." "No, I reckon you can't," she said. "Whoever was responsible for your make up left out a mind, not to say feeling." Colter drawled a low laugh. "Well, have that your own way. But how much longer are you going to be like this here?" "Like what?" she rejoined, sharply. "Well, this standoffishness of yours." "Colter, I told you to let me alone," she said, sullenly. "Sure, and you did that before. But this time you're different, and well, I'm getting tired of it." Here the cool, slow voice of the Texan sounded an inflexibility before absent, a timbre that hinted of illimitable power. Ellen Jorth shrugged her lithe shoulders, and slowly rising, she picked up the little rifle and turned to step into the cabin. "Colter," she said, "fetch my pack and my blankets in here." "Sure," he returned, with good nature. Jean saw Ellen Jorth lay the rifle lengthwise in a chink between two logs, and then slowly turn back to the wall. Jean knew her then, yet did not know her. The brown flash of her face seemed that of an older, graver woman. His strained gaze, like his waiting mind, had expected something, he knew not what. A hardened face, a ghost of beauty, a recklessness, a distorted, bitter, lost expression in keeping with her fortunes. But he had reckoned falsely. She did not look like that. There was incalculable change, but the beauty remained, somehow different. Her red lips were parted, her brooding eyes, looking out straight from under the level, dark brows, seemed sloe black and wonderful with their steady, passionate light. Jean, in his eager, hungry devouring of the beloved face, did not on the first instant grasp the significance of its expression. He was seeing the features that had haunted him, but quickly he interpreted her expression as the somber, hunted look of a woman who would bear no more. Under the torn blouse her full breast heaved. She held her hands clenched at her sides. She was listening, waiting for that jangling, slow step. It came, and with the sound she subtly changed. She was a woman hiding her true feelings. She relaxed, and that strong, dark look of fury seemed to fade back into her eyes. Colter appeared at the door, carrying a roll of blankets and a pack. "Throw them here," she said, "and I reckon you needn't bother coming in." That angered the man. With one long stride he stepped over the door sill, down into the cabin, and flung the blankets at her feet and then the pack after it. Whereupon he deliberately sat down in the door facing her. With one hand he slid off his sombrero, which fell outside, and with the other he reached into his upper vest pocket for the little bag of tobacco that showed there. All the time he looked at her. By the light now unobstructed, Jean descried Colter's face, and the sight of it then sounded the roll and drum of his passions. "Well, Ellen, I reckon we'll have it out right now and here," he said, and with tobacco in one hand, paper in the other, he began the operations of making a cigarette. However, he scarcely removed his glance from her. "Yes?" queried Ellen Jorth. "I'm going to have things the way they were before, and more," he declared. The cigarette paper shook in his fingers. "What d'you mean?" she demanded. "You know what I mean," he retorted. Voice and action were subtly unhinging this man's control over himself. "Maybe I don't. I reckon you'd better talk plain." The rustler had clear, gray yellow eyes, flawless, like crystal, and suddenly they danced with little fiery flecks. "The last time I laid my hand on you I got hit for my pains, an' shore that been ranklin'." "Colter, you'll get hit again if you put your hands on me," she said, dark, straight glance on him. A frown wrinkled the level brows. "You mean that?" he asked, thickly. "I shore do." Manifestly he accepted her assertion. Something of the incredulity and bewilderment that had vied with his resentment utterly disappeared from his face. "Here I've been waitin' for you to love me," he declared, with a gesture not without dignified emotion. "Your givin' in without that wasn't so much to me." And at these words of the rustler's, Jean Isbel felt an icy, sickening shudder creep into his soul. He shut his eyes. The end of his dream had been long in coming, but at last it had arrived. A mocking voice, like a hollow wind, echoed through that region, that lonely and ghost-like hall of his heart which had harbored faith. She burst into speech, louder and sharper, the first words of which Jean's strangely throbbing ears did not distinguish. "You? I never gave in to you, and I never will." "But, girl, I kissed you, hugged you, handled you," he expostulated, and the making of the cigarette ceased. "Yes, you did, you brute, when I was so downhearted and weak I couldn't lift my hand," she flashed. "Ah, you mean I couldn't do that now?" "I should smile I do, Jim Colter," she replied. "Well, maybe I see presently," he went on, straining with words. "But I'm sure curious. Daggs, then, he was nothin' to you?" "No more than you," she said, morbidly. "He used to run after me long ago, it seems. I was only a girl then, innocent, and I'd not known any but rough men. I couldn't all the time, every day, every hour, keep him at arm's length. Sometimes, before I knew, I didn't care. I was a child. A kiss meant nothing to me. But after I knew—" Ellen dropped her head in brooding silence. "So do you expect me to believe that?" he queried, with a derisive leer. "Bah! What do I care what you believe?" she cried, with lifting head. "How about Sim Bruce?" "That coyote? He lied about me, Jim Colter. And any man, half a man, would have known he lied." "Wal, Sim always bragged about you bein' his girl," asserted Colter. "An' he wasn't over particular about details of your love makin'." Ellen gazed out of the door, over Colter's head, as if the forest out there was a refuge. She evidently sensed more about the man than appeared in his slow talk, in his slouching position. Her lips shut in a firm line, as if to hide their trembling and to still her passionate tongue. Jean, in his absorption, magnified his perceptions. Not yet was Ellen Jorth afraid of this man, but she feared the situation. Jean's heart was at bursting pitch. All within him seemed chaos, a wreck of beliefs and convictions. Nothing was true. He would wake presently out of a nightmare. Yet, as surely as he quivered there, he felt the imminence of a great moment, a lightning flash, a thunderbolt, a balance struck. Colter attended to the forgotten cigarette. He rolled it, lighted it, all the time with lowered, pondering head. And when he had puffed a cloud of smoke he suddenly looked up with face as hard as flint, eyes as fiery as molten steel. "Well, Ellen, how about Jean Isbel, our half-breed Nez Perce friend, who was sure seen handlin' you familiar?" he drawled. Ellen Jorth quivered as under a lash. Her brown face turned a dusty scarlet that, slowly receding, left her pale. "Damn you, Jim Colter!" she burst out furiously. "I wish Jean Isbel would jump in that door or down out of that loft. He killed Greaves for defiling my name. He'd kill you for your dirty insult. And I'd like to watch him do it, you cold-blooded Texan, you thievin' rustler, you liar. You lied about my father's death, and I know why. You stole my father's gold. And now you want me. You expect me to fall into your arms. My Heaven, can't you tell a decent woman? Was your mother decent? Was your sister decent? Bah, I'm appealing to deafness. But you hear this, Jim Colter. I'm not what you think I am. I'm not the damned hussy you liars have made me out. I'm a Jorth, a lass. I've no home, no relatives, no friends. I've been forced to live my life with rustlers, vile men like you and Daggs and the rest of your like. But I've been good. Do you hear that? I am good. So help me God, and you and all your rottenness can't make me bad." Colter lounged to his tall height, and the laxity of the man vanished. Vanished also was Jean Isbel's suspended, icy dread. The cold clogging of his fevered mind vanished in a white, living, leaping flame. Silently he drew his knife and lay there watching with eyes of a wildcat. The instant Colter stepped far enough over toward the edge of the loft, Jean meant to bound erect and plunge down upon him. But Jean could wait now. Colter had a gun at his hip. He must never have a chance to draw it. "An' so you wish Jean Isbel would hop in here, do you?" queried Colter. "Wal, if I had any pity on you, that's done for it." A sweep of his long arm, so swift Ellen had no time to move, brought his hand in clutching contact with her. And the force of it flung her half across the cabin room, leaving the sleeve of her blouse in his grasp. Panting, she put out that bared arm and her other to ward him off as he took long, slow strides toward her. Jean rose half to his feet, dragged almost by ungovernable passion to risk all in one leap. But the distance was too great. Colter, blind as he was to all outward things, would hear, would see in time to make Jean's effort futile. Shaking like a leaf, Jean sank back, eye again to the crack between the rafters. Ellen did not retreat, nor scream, nor move. Every line of her body was instinct with fight, and the magnificent blaze of her eyes would have checked a less callous brute. Colter's big hand darted between Ellen's arms and fastened in the front of her blouse. He did not try to hold her or draw her close. The unleashed passion of the man required violence. In one savage pull he tore off her blouse, exposing her white, rounded shoulders and heaving bosom, where instantly a wave of red burned upward. Overcome by the tremendous violence and spirit of the rustler, Ellen sank to her knees with blanched face and dilating eyes, trying with folded arms and trembling hand to hide her nudity. At that moment the rapid beat of hoofs on the hard trail outside halted Colter in his tracks. "Hell!" he exclaimed. "An' who's that?" With a fierce action he flung the remnants of Ellen's blouse in her face and turned to leap out the door. Jean saw Ellen catch the blouse and try to wrap it around her, while she sagged against the wall and stared at the door. The hoofbeats pounded to a solid, thumping halt just outside. "Jim, there's hell to pay," rasped out a panting voice. "Wal, Springer, I reckon I wish you paid it without spoilin' my deals," reported Colter, cool and sharp. "Deals, huh? You'll be forgettin' your lady love in a minute," replied Springer, "when I catch my breath." "Where's Somers?" demanded Colter. "I reckon he's all shot up, if my eyes didn't fool me." "Where is he?" yelled Colter. "Jimmy's lyin' up in the bushes round that bluff. I didn't wait to see how he was hurt, but he shore stopped some lead, an' he flopped like a chicken with its head cut off." "Where's Antonio?" "He run like the greaser he is," declared Springer, disgustedly. "Ah! An' where's Queen?" queried Colter, after a significant pause. "Dead." End of chapter 14, part 1. Section 28 of To the Last Man by Zane Grey. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 14, part 2. The silence ensuing was fraught with a suspense that held Jean in cold bonds. He saw the girl below rise from her knees, one hand holding the blouse to her breast, the other extended, and with strange, repressed, almost frantic look she swayed toward the door. "Well, talk," ordered Colter harshly. "Jim, there ain't a hell of a lot," replied Springer, drawing a deep breath, but what there is sure interestin'. Me an' Somers took Antonio with us. He left his woman with the sheep. An' we rode up the canyon, clumb out on top, an' made a circle back on the ridge. That's the way we've been huntin' for tracks. Up there in a bare spot we run plumb into Queen sittin' against a tree right out in the open. Queerest sight you ever seen. The damn gunfighter had set down to wait for Isbel, who was trailin' him, as we suspected, an' he died there. He wasn't cold when we found him. Somers was quick to see a trick, so he propped Queen up an' tied the guns to his hands. An', Jim, the queerest thing about that deal was this. Queen's guns was empty, not a shell left. It beat us holler. We left him there an' hid up high on the bluff, maybe 100 yards off. The horses we left back of a thicket. An' we waited there for a long time. But sure enough, the half-breed come. He was too smart, too much Injun. He would not cross the open, but went around. An' then he seen Queen. It was great to watch him. After a little he shoved his rifle out an' went right for Queen. This is when I wanted to shoot. I could have plugged him, but Somers says wait an' make it sure. When Isbel got up to Queen, he was sort of half hid by a tree. I couldn't wait no longer, so I shot. I hit him, too. We all begun to shoot. Somers showed himself, an' that's when Isbel opened up. He used up a whole magazine on Somers, an' then, sudden like, he quit. It didn't take me long to figure maybe he was out of shells. When I seen him run I was certain of it. Then we made for the horses an' rode after Isbel. Pretty soon I seen him runnin' like a deer down the ridge. I yelled an' spurred after him. There's where Antonio quit me. But I kept on, an' I got a shot at Isbel. He ran out of sight. I followed him by spots of blood on the stones an' grass until I couldn't trail him no more. He must have gone down over the cliffs. He couldn't have done nothin' else without me seein' him. I found his rifle, an' here it is to prove what I say. I had to go back to climb down off the rim, an' I rode fast down the canyon. He's somewhere along that west wall, hidin' in the brush. Hard hit, if I know anything about the color of blood." "Wal, that beats me holler too," ejaculated Colter. "Jim, what's to be done?" inquired Springer eagerly. "If we're sharp we can corral that half breed. He's the last of the Isbels." "More, pard, he's the last of the Isbel outfit," declared Colter. "If you can show me blood in his tracks I'll trail him." "You can bet I'll show you," rejoined the other rustler. "But listen, wouldn't it be better for us first to see if he crossed the canyon? I reckon he didn't, but let's make sure. An' if he didn't, we'll have him somewhere along the west canyon wall. He's not got no gun. He'll never run that way if he had. Jim, he's our meat." "Shore he'll have that knife," pondered Colter. "We needn't worry about that," said the other positively. "He's hard hit, I tell you. All we got to do is find that bloody trail again and stick to it, going careful. He's layin' low like a crippled wolf." "Springer, I want the job of finishin' that half breed," hissed Colter. "I'll give 10 years of my life to stick a gun down his throat and shoot it off." "All right, let's rustle. Maybe you'll not have to give much more'n 10 minutes, because I tell you I can find him. It's been easy, but Jim, I reckon I was afraid." "Leave your horse for me and go ahead," the rustler then said, brusquely. "I've got a job in the cabin here." "Haw! Haw! Wal, Jim, I'll rustle a bit down the trail and wait. No huntin' Jean Isbel alone, not for me. I've had a queer feelin' about that knife he used on Greaves, an' I reckon you ought to let that Jorth hussy alone long enough to Springer, I reckon I've got the hog tie her." His voice became indistinguishable, and footsteps attested to a slow moving away of the men. Jean had listened with ears acutely strung to catch every syllable, while his gaze rested upon Ellen, who stood beside the door. Every line of her body denoted a listening intensity. Her back was toward Jean, so that he could not see her face. And he did not want to see, but he could not help seeing her naked shoulders. She put her head out of the door. Suddenly she drew it in quickly and half turned her face, slowly raising her white arm. This was the left one, and bore the mark of Colter's hard fingers. She gave a little gasp. Her eyes became large and staring. They were bent on the hand that she had removed from a step on the ladder. On hand and wrist showed a bright red smear of blood. Jean, with a convulsive leap of his heart, realized that he had left his bloody tracks on the ladder as he had climbed. That moment seemed the supremely terrible one of his life. Ellen Jorth's face blanched and her eyes darkened and dilated with exceeding amaze and flashing thought to become fixed with horror. That instant was the one in which her reason connected the blood on the ladder with the escape of Jean Isbel. One moment she leaned there, still as a stone except for her heaving breast, and then her fixed gaze changed to a swift, dark blaze, comprehending yet inscrutable, as she flashed it up the ladder to the loft. She could see nothing, yet she knew, and Jean knew that she knew, he was there. A marvelous transformation passed over her features and even over her form. Jean choked with the ache in his throat. Slowly she put the bloody hand behind her, while with the other she still held the torn blouse to her breast. Colter's slouching musical step sounded outside, and it might have been a strange breath of infinitely vitalizing and passionate life blown into the well springs of Ellen Jorth's being. Isbel had no name for her then. The spirit of a woman had been to him a thing unknown. She swayed back from the door against the wall in singular softened poise, as if all the steel had melted out of her body. And as Colter's tall shadow fell across the threshold, Jean Isbel felt himself staring with eyeballs that ached, straining incredulous sight at this woman who in a few seconds had bewildered his senses with her transfiguration. He saw, but could not comprehend. "Jim, I heard all Springer told you," she said. The look of her dumbfounded Colter, and her voice seemed to shake him visibly. "Suppose you did. What then?" he demanded, harshly, as he halted with one booted foot over the threshold. Malignant and forceful, he eyed her darkly, doubtfully. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "What, of me?" "No, of Jean Isbel. He might kill you, and then where would I be?" "Wal, I'm damned!" ejaculated the rustler. "What's got into you?" He moved to enter, but a sort of fascination bound him. "Jim, I hated you a moment ago," she burst out. "But now, with that Jean Isbel somewhere near, hidin', watchin' to kill you, and maybe me, too, I don't hate you any more. Take me away." "Girl, have you lost your nerve?" he demanded. "My God, Colter, can't you see?" she implored. "Won't you take me away?" "I shore will, presently," he replied, grimly. "But you'll wait till I've shot the lights out of this Isbel." "No," she cried. "Take me away now and I'll give in. I'll be what you want. You can do with me as you like." Colter's lofty frame leaped, as if at the release of bursting blood. With a lunge he cleared the threshold to loom over her. "Am I out of my head or are you?" he asked, in low, hoarse voice. His darkly corded face expressed extreme amaze. "Jim, I mean it," she whispered, edging an inch nearer him, her white face uplifted, her dark eyes unreadable in their eloquence and mystery. "I've no friend but you. I'll be yours. I'm lost. What does it matter? If you want me, take me now, before I kill myself." "Ellen Jorth, there's something wrong about you," he responded. "Did you tell the truth when you denied ever being a sweetheart of Sim Bruce?" "Yes, I told you the truth." "Uh-huh. And how do you account for laying me out with every dirty name you could give tongue to?" "Oh, it was temper. I wanted to be let alone." "Temper? Well, I reckon you've got one," he retorted grimly. "And I'm not sure you're not crazy or lying. An hour ago I couldn't touch you." "You may now, if you promise to take me away at once. This place has got on my nerves. I couldn't sleep here with that Isbel hiding round. Could you?" "Well, I reckon I'd not sleep very deep." "Then let us go." He shook his lean, eagle-like head in slow, doubtful vehemence, and his piercing gaze studied her distrustfully. Yet all the while there was manifest in his strung frame an almost irrepressible violence, held in abeyance to his will. "That about your being so good?" he inquired, with a return of the mocking drawl. "Never mind what's past," she flashed, with passion dark as his. "I've made my offer." "Shore there's a lie about you somewhere," he muttered thickly. "Man, could I do more?" she demanded in scorn. "No, but it's a lie," he returned. "You'll get me to take you away and then fool me, run off God knows what. Women are all liars." Manifestly he could not believe in her strange transformation. Memory of her wild, passionate denunciation of him and his kind must have seared even his calloused soul. But the ruthless nature of him had not weakened nor softened in the least as to his intentions. This weather-vane veering of hers bewildered him, obsessed him with its possibilities. He had the look of a man who was divided between love of her and hate, whose love demanded a return, but whose hate required a proof of her abasement. Not proof of surrender, but proof of her shame. The ignominy of him thirsted for its like. He could grind her beauty under his heel, but he could not soften to this feminine inscrutableness. And whatever was the truth of Ellen Jorth in this moment, beyond Colter's gloomy and stunted intelligence, beyond even the love of Jean Isbel, it was something that held the balance of mastery. She read Colter's mind. She dropped the torn blouse from her hand and stood there, unashamed, with a wave of her white breast pulsing, eyes black as night and full of hell, her face white, tragic, terrible, yet strangely lovely. "Take me away," she whispered, stretching one white arm toward him, then the other. Colter, even as she moved, had leaped with inarticulate cry and radiant face to meet her embrace. But it seemed, just as her left arm flashed up toward his neck, that he saw her bloody hand and wrist. Strange how that checked his ardor. Threw up his lean head like that striking bird of prey. "Blood! What the hell!" he ejaculated, and in one sweep he grasped her. "How'd you do that? Are you cut? Hold still." Ellen could not release her hand. "I scratched myself," she said. "Where? All that blood?" And suddenly he flung her hand back with fierce gesture, and the gleams of his yellow eyes were like the points of leaping flames. They pierced her, read the secret falsity of her. Slowly he stepped backward, guardedly. His hand moved to his gun, and his glance circled and swept the interior of the cabin. As if he had a nose of a hound in sight to follow scent, his eyes bent to the dust of the ground before the door. He quivered, grew rigid as stone, and then moved his head with exceeding slowness, as if searching through a microscope in the dust. Farther to the left, to the foot of the ladder, and up one step, another, a third, all the way up to the loft. Then he whipped out his gun and wheeled to face the girl. "Ellen, you've got your half breed here," he said, with a terrible smile. She neither moved nor spoke. There was a suggestion of collapse, but it was only a change where the alluring softness of her hardened into a strange, rapt glow. And in it seemed the same mastery that had characterized her former aspect. Herein the treachery of her was revealed. She had known what she meant to do in any case. Colter, standing at the door, reached a long arm toward the ladder, where he laid his hand on a rung. Taking it away, he held it palm outward for her to see the dark splotch of blood. "See?" "Yes, I see," she said ringingly. Passion wrenched him, transformed him. All that about leaving here with me, about giving in, was a lie. "No, Colter, it was a truth. I'll go yet, now, if you'll spare him." She whispered the last word, and made a slight movement of her hand toward the loft. "Girl," he exploded incredulously, "you love this half breed, this Isbel, you love him." "With all my heart. Thank God, it has been my glory. It might have been my salvation. But now I'll go to hell with you if you'll spare him." "Damn my soul!" rasped out the rustler, as if something of respect was wrung from that sordid deep of him. You woman! Jorth will turn over in his grave. He'll rise out of his grave if this Isbel got you." "Hurry, hurry!" implored Ellen. "Springer may come back. I think I heard a call." "Wal, Ellen Jorth, I'll not spare Isbel nor you," he returned, with dark and meaning leer, as he turned to ascend the ladder. Jean Isbel, too, had reached the climax of his suspense. Gathering all his muscles in a knot, he prepared to leap upon Colter as he mounted the ladder. But Ellen Jorth screamed piercingly and snatched her rifle from its resting place, and cocking it, she held it forward and low. "Colter!" Her scream and his uttered name stiffened him. "You'll spare Jean Isbel," she rang out. "Drop that gun! Drop it!" "Shore, Ellen. Easy now. Remember your temper. I'll let Isbel off." He panted huskily, and all his body sank quiveringly to a crouch. "Drop your gun. Don't turn round, Colter. I'll kill you." But even then he failed to divine the meaning and the spirit of her. "Aw, now, Ellen," he entreated, in louder, huskier tones, as if dragged by fatal doubt of her still, he began to turn. Crash! The rifle emptied its contents into Colter's breast. All his body sprang up. He dropped the gun. Both hands fluttered toward her, and an awful surprise flashed over his face. "So help me God!" he whispered, with blood thick in his voice. Then, darkly, as one groping, he reached for her with shaking hands. You white-throated hussy! I'll..." He grasped the quivering rifle barrel. Crash! She shot him again. As he swayed over her and fell, she had to leap aside, and his clutching hand tore the rifle from her grasp. Then in convulsion he writhed, to heave on his back and stretch out, a ghastly spectacle. Ellen backed away from it, her white arms wide, a slow horror blotting out the passion of her face. Then from without came a shrill call and the sound of rapid footsteps. Ellen leaned against the wall, staring at Colter. "Hey, Jim, what's the shooting?" called Springer, breathlessly. As his form darkened the doorway, Jean once again gathered all his muscular force for a tremendous spring. Springer saw the girl first, and he appeared thunderstruck. His jaw dropped. He needed not the white gleam of her person to transfix him. Her eyes did that, and they were riveted in unutterable horror upon something on the ground. Thus instinctively directed, Springer espied Colter. "You've shot him!" he shrieked. "What for, you hussy? Ellen Jorth, if you've killed him I'll..." He strode toward where Colter lay. Then Jean, rising silently, took a step, and like a tiger he launched himself into the air, down upon the rustler. Even as he leaped, Springer gave a quick upward look, and he cried out. Jean's moccasined feet struck him squarely and sent him staggering into the wall, where his head hit hard. Jean fell, but bounded up as the half-stunned Springer drew his gun. Then Jean lunged forward with a single sweep of his arm and looked no more. Ellen ran swaying out of the door, and once clear of the threshold, she tottered out on the grass to sink to her knees. The bright golden sunlight gleamed upon her white shoulders and arms. Jean had one foot out of the door when he saw her, and he whirled back to get her blouse. But Springer had fallen upon it. Snatching up a blanket, Jean ran out. "Ellen, Ellen, Ellen!" he cried. "It's over!" And reaching her, he tried to wrap her in the blanket. She wildly clutched his knees. Jean was conscious only of her white, agonized face and the dark eyes with their look of terrible strain. Did you?" she whispered. "Yes, it's over," he said gravely. "Ellen, the Isbel Jorth feud is ended." "Oh, thank God!" she cried in breaking voice. "Jean, you're wounded. The blood on the step." "My arm. See, it's not bad. Ellen, let me wrap this round you." Folding the blanket around her shoulders, he held it there and entreated her to get up. But she only clung closer. She hid her face on his knees. Long shudders rippled over her, shaking the blanket, shaking Jean's hands. Distraught, he did not know what to do, and his own heart was bursting. "Ellen, you must not kneel there that way," he implored. "Jean, Jean," she moaned, and clung the tighter. He tried to lift her up, but she was a dead weight, and with that hold on him seemed anchored at his feet. "I killed Colter," she gasped. "I had to kill him. I offered to fling myself away." "For me!" he cried, poignantly. "Oh, Ellen, Ellen, the world has come to an end." "Hush! Don't keep saying that. Of course you killed him. You saved my life, for I'd never have let you go off with him. Yes, you killed him. You're a Jorth and I'm an Isbel. We've blood on our hands, both of us. I for you and you for me." His voice of entreaty and sadness strengthened her, and she raised her white face, loosening her clasp to lean back and look up. Tragic, sweet, despairing, the loveliness of her, the significance of her there on her knees, thrilled him to his soul. "Blood on my hands," she whispered. "Yes, it was awful killing him. But all I care for in this world is for your forgiveness and your faith that saved my soul." "Child, there's nothing to forgive," he responded. "Nothing. Please, Ellen." "I lied to you," she cried. "I lied to you." "Ellen, listen, darling." And the tender epithet brought her head and arms back close pressed to him. "I know now," he faltered on. "I found out today what I believed. And I swear to God, by the memory of my dead mother, down in my heart, I never believed what you tried to make me believe. Never." "Jean, I love you, love you, love you," she breathed with exquisite, passionate sweetness. Her dark eyes burned up into his. "Ellen, I can't lift you up," he said in trembling eagerness, signifying his crippled arm. "But I can kneel with you." Chapter 14, Part 2. Recording by